Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks. As we tried to get a little technology going, it looks like we're not going to get that going, but that's okay. We want to just meet and answer any questions that you may have about the Gemini process, Gemini 2 process. Let's just go over a few things, some questions that we've had asked of us. Again, we're trying to take an unlimited number of new schools into the Gemini 2 process. I say that because we're going to need to see how many apply. We're really looking for the quality of the application. You simply need to have 80% vote of the elementary and secondary school of which you want to be engaged in redesign. You can have more schools than that if you want, but you need to have at least that. You need to have a letter of support from your teacher association, and you need to have a public vote of your school board. That, along with your application, which is part of your application, is due April 5th. And then we'll be determining those applications and announcing those at our April meeting, state board meeting. And then we will have some activities over the summer, but formally, the Gemini 2 group will launch in a regional model this fall. So with that, I think Brad and I are just going to kind of hang out with you. We're going to come back in and unmute everyone. And we'll see if that was a good idea or not. Or can we set it up, Nick, where they can mute stuff? I mute everyone. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, we'll keep you muted. And yeah, thanks. Well, we can be heard. So you can type it in the chat room, or you can just open up your mic yourself and ask questions, and we'll be glad to try to answer any of those that you have. I might say this as you're thinking about your questions. If you're a current Mercury or Gemini 1 district and you're not planning to launch this fall, which takes out the Mercury, if you're a Gemini 1 and you're not planning to launch this fall, you're welcome to be a part of the Gemini 2 process. If you're a Mercury and or Gemini 1, you are planning to launch, but you want your other schools to go through the process with the Gemini 2, you're welcome to do that, or you're welcome to do that on your own. That's really, we'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, and part of our goal is, as we do these regional models, support models, is that if you're a Gemini 1 and you're not launching, we would strongly encourage you to be a part of the regional model, because you could also share some of the processes you've already gone through, but we could also take you through maybe more of a deeper dive into the process than what we were able to provide you this year.
So one of the questions is asking us about middle schools in particular, and what specific redesign structures have they followed. We want to say this, that we are in the pilot phase of Mercury right now. So to say that we know exactly what those schools are going to look like, I think would not be fair to them. But what we can say, and we'll kind of jump back and forth on this, and maybe Jay and Tammy, if they're on the line, want to also say this. We see basically some general structures coming together. Schools are thinking about, how do I personalize the school day, and outside the school day for that matter, for every student, both in terms of what they learn, how they learn, when they learn it. Now, that's very broad, but I think we see in some capacity school districts wrestling with that concept of how to design it. And I might say this, when you talk about things like that, you say, well, how do they schedule it? We're not going to talk about the schedule, because even through Gemini 2, you have to decide what it is that you want. Then at the end, we'll come back and schedule it, because it gets in the way of everything else. So that would be one. Project-based learning. that's centered around cognitive skills and social emotional skills. So it has academic content built into it, but what they're trying to get out of the projects are cognitive skills, which are putting those skill sets together, and the interpersonal, intrapersonal skill sets going forward. Those two I know come to mind, Brad. What else do you see in the common designs? This will be true also of elementary and high schools too. It's not just related to middle school.
And I know Jay, I see he's on the line. I don't know if he would like to add anything to that specific to middle school, but like Randy said, they're just seven months into this, 6-7 months. So they started out going through a process, and I see Jay unmiked here. So Jay, you want to jump in real quick?
Sure, and it's a lot what Randy already discussed, and that it would be pretty unfair to talk about some of the redesign strategies that our schools, any of our schools, are really using right now. But if you look at the commonalities, especially at the middle school level, all of our middle schools are looking at what do students need to know and be able to do by the time they graduate and they're moving on to the high school. What do they look like with their social emotional development? What do they look like academically, civic engagement, career exploration, all those things. So all of our middle schools are redesigning around those goal areas for students, but how they're approaching that and how they're identifying different redesign strategies that works for their students could be completely different. But you know, some of the commonalities, project-based learning is something that all of our schools are looking at. A lot of our middle schools and high schools and elementary schools are using a soft start to the day, to where the kids are not going to their first hour. They're actually meeting with their advisor in kind of a just a social emotional kind of career exploration focus. And then some of our schools are also piloting a wrap up to the day, to where the kids aren't going home directly from last hour. They're reporting back to their advisory period, and just kind of reflecting on the day. So there's a lot of commonalities, but they're also unique to the needs in that particular school.
Thanks, Jay. And I think, you know, what I think all the schools are trying to do is shift away from being academic content, age, and time-based to looking at different structures that allow those things to take place. And that's where I think then we get into scheduling. Another question about physical education. Absolutely. One of the things, and we've got several elementary in particular designing this, but I know if you look at the Center for Disease Control, they've said for a number of years that every student needs 60 minutes of activity a day. And so I know we've got some of our Mercury schools that are increasing art, music, and PE time because of the research, especially in the early grades, that say that's so important, but carrying that over. And in fact, I think, Brad, you even saw maybe a personalized PE wellness even with secondary on some of your visits. But it certainly is a strong part of the principles of redesign, Brian, as we look at it.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd like to stress on this is your building, your team designing, and that's what you'll be doing next year, is designing what is best for your building, your community, your staff, your kids. We will be there, us and the service centers, and we're going to have a huge team to help guide you through a process. And you'll be starting from square one, where the Mercury 7 started last year, on going through that process. There will be model districts for you to go look at, but you're going to come back and say, well, then what components of that fit what we want? And we're just going to help coach you through that process. But it is designed by your teachers, co-led with your administration, involving your parents, and your community to fit what best meets your needs, not just going out and looking at some model and saying, we want to do that, because that may or may not fit what your why is. Why is it that you want to redesign? And that's what next year's all about.
Other questions or things you'd like to know about the process, what's going to take place, questions maybe staff is asking of you? We want to make sure we're clear on everything.
Yeah, Randy, this is Darren.
Sorry, Darren. Not sure where we're getting that feedback. Maybe it's on our end.
I don't know.
Can you type it in?
Sorry.
I'll work on that.
Sorry, Darren.
You know, while you're thinking of other questions, and Darren's typing that in. Meetings. It's I think it's important to understand that the Mercury and the Gemini schools are following the same process that we hope what your districts are doing in your buildings within the KSDE process. They're just being very aggressive in their approach of doing so. Because in KSDE, you got the first year where you're looking at doing a needs assessment, you're looking at your data, you're asking yourselves those questions of why would we want to adjust this or change that? Then you put a plan together, you set some goals, you start piloting. The Mercury and Gemini, we're providing them intense supports to do that in 1 year so they can launch, but they're looking at redesigning their system in order to accomplish what KSDE has laid out, but not just in a traditional system that we've had for decades. So it is the same process, but it's looking at redesigning the system in that you're structured under. So I hope that helps.
In terms of a timeline, the short answer, will we allow schools to join each year? Our thought right now is yes, we're going to try to support a process very similar to Gemini II each year as we go forward. But you know, we're designing this through Mercury right now. We met briefly this morning after another meeting, kind of talked maybe about a wraparound 2-year support package that we would have, and then you know you'd be kind of on your own. So, but the answer is yes, we will try to scale this up each time each year and learn from that. It is a 1 year. So if you want to be in Gemini 2, you'll launch in August of 18, and you'll launch your new design in August of 19. We found that with good support, you can do that in 1 year. So I'm moving to some other questions. Can you clarify some of the expectations from the current Mercury 7 districts? Do we still need the same approvals and applications?
Yes. It's the same application that, other than updating some dates and changing names from Mercury to Gemini, but it's the same application process that the Mercury 7 went through.
Now, yeah, because you want to have those buildings have buy-in at 80% if we're going to be involved. You can do it internally if you're a Mercury school. Some districts, you know, are just saying, I think McPherson, I'm not going to speak for them, but I believe are saying, I think we can do it ourselves. We don't need to come to the regional meetings. That's fine. That's fine all the time. But if you're going to be involved with us, we want to have some assurance that people want to be there. So that's why the 80%, and you've already got the union support. I assume that would still take place. So
a couple of the things that I saw on here as far as just the process and the timeline, we're going to announce who the Gemini 2 districts are at the April board meeting. Immediately following that, what we're working on with the regional support models is those that are approved will come together sometime late April, and we're going to start giving you some things to begin thinking about, working on, some things to have in place in late April, May, things that you can do over the summer in order to prepare for the regional models come next August. We are also in the process of developing a redesigned flight manual, which will be used at every region. There will be people from service centers as well as people from the State Department there. We're looking at least once every month, you will send your redesigned teams to whatever region is closest to you. And then every other week, there will be work that you'll need to be doing back home weekly. And then you come back together. So it's I don't want to say it's intense, but it's very focused.
But it's intense.
Yeah,
it's work that your staff will do, but it's work that we will push you in order to get done. And so I think Mary's what you were asking about. It's monthly, but probably every 2 weeks we're going to do a check-in and then meet monthly. Who's involved? That would be the team that you choose. We want teachers to be involved in this. We want them to help lead along with the principals, the superintendent, central office people. We want a flat organizational structure. So it would be the teachers that you decide are going to be on there. Jill, you're asking for the regional support. We're thinking right now for 2 years, or in some cases, let's say Gemini 2, it might be this summer, all of next year, the following summer, all of the following second year, and then when you launch, and then that last summer. So maybe 3 summers wrapped around 2 years would be our support. But we're talking about that. So I think we're open for discussion. At some point, because we'll be taking on more school districts, we probably can't continue with the number of staff we have to continue to do that, but we're certainly open to discussions. But right now, it kind of looks like maybe 3 summers and 2 years.
But our goal with developing a regional support model is that we only have so much capacity at the state level, but to be able to large scale this, you have to be able to plug in to some regional home base in order to be able to move forward, to provide supports. And I envision 3-4 years down the road, when we have 80 to 100 districts engaged in redesign, we're going to have plenty of model schools. We're going to have plenty of schools and districts out there that you then can continue to build on your own. And we will still be plugged in to help monitor, to help learn, to help provide resources. But is there summer work? Absolutely. But it all depends on what it is that you want to accomplish in a redesign. But you're going to set it up, and then you're going to find out then the best time to provide our teachers some intense professional development might be in June. So, but it all depends. But we want to be honest with you, the places that we see that are doing total redesigns, they're deciding that they have to spend time committed to this, including professional development. And a lot of that time is in the month of June.
And so, as Brad said, it's one meeting a month, lots of work in the district during the off weeks of that. And then, yeah, there would be some summer, maybe readings and discussions, or also when we get into the second summer or third summer, some training opportunities that you'd want to avail yourself to. So there's a trade-off here of your contractual work, and then, if we want teachers to be involved, which we have in the Mercury, then those teachers are heavily involved. But it is a time commitment. Otherwise, you can't move it fast enough, and that's been one of our issues. If you look at scalability of real massive change across the United States and in Kansas, it happens in a classroom, lots of good classrooms, or it happens in a school, or you open a school and choose the staff that you want. In this case, we're trying to keep everyone that's existingly employed. We're trying to keep the existing leadership, but that requires a commitment of time, and then it will require a commitment of time on our part too. And so we are committing that to you. Good questions. These are great, great questions. And you certainly can reach out to the Mercury, you know, whether it's the smaller districts like Stockton and Twin Valley, or the larger districts like Olathe, Liberal, medium size like Wellington, McPherson, Coffeyville. They can kind of give you an idea. But if teachers are going to be involved, then you've got to meet to be involved. Otherwise, it's just some administrators or a handful of people sitting in a room making the decisions, and then people complain on the back end. So it's a tension that we'll all have to balance together.
And teachers do need to be involved. Other questions, thoughts?
You can try to unmute, or you can type in. While you're maybe thinking about what it is that you'd like to know, we'd certainly like to know what challenges you think that you have. You know, we've got about 29, 30 people on the call. So, you know, what your thoughts are. We get more excited, I think, every day. It becomes clearer to us every day what this is going to look like in a broad sense. And I want to give you the broad sense. So if I walk into Galena, or I walk into Winfield, or I walk into Satana, on any given day, I can walk into a freshman English classroom. Now, what they're doing could be very different, but we're a freshman English classroom, which are organized around what age am I? I'm a freshman. I take English, and it's some block of time. Usually, the most common is 52 minutes. I can walk into a third grade classroom. Those are common. And again, what I think we're seeing in the redesign is commonalities are taking these things that we say are important that students should be able to do, putting all those together and having lots of meetings about those, and then saying, how do I schedule that? We need to find other places that know how to schedule that and make that work. And it's shifting the paradigm from the kid being a passive learner to be an active part of their learning process. And I can just say every day we get more excited about the opportunities that we're seeing out with the Mercury and some of the Gemini I districts.
Any other thoughts? I think, you know, the one thing from us is you could do this on your own. You don't need the State Department in order to redesign. We just felt that what could we do to help you scale it by providing some coaching, some mentoring, some supports, and that is our offer, as well as 5 of the 7 service centers are on board, fully on board, to help us regionalize this, so you don't all have to drive to Topeka, or Jay and Tammy can't be everywhere, but they're going to help lead this. We just want to get to the point where every school district in this state has a place regionally where they can get supports around redesigning.
So one of the questions came in, we like the idea of kickstarting this in April, May, and then having time together this summer. What might be the timeline for setting those dates? As soon as we notify you that you're accepted as a Gemini II, we'll start setting the dates with you that make sense for you. Yeah. So we'll get immediately into it. And again, we want to customize it to your needs. So April. We would start setting the timelines in April.
And actually, I believe we have a regional support team meeting this Friday, and that's exactly what we're going to be putting together is the timeline and schedule. So as soon as you are notified in April, whatever region that you closely connect with, they will be contacting you, giving you the time, the resources, the information, pulling everybody together. And again, we don't know who all is going to apply, but we do know that we have some Gemini 1s out there, as well as the new Gemini 2s. We'll be bringing them together, giving you some things to begin working on, start thinking about building those redesign teams, putting them together, just some good talking points to share with your community, your parents, just some things that you can be working on before the end of the school year, what you can be doing over the summer in order to be ready to start the regional models in August.
Question about state assessments. It really isn't affected immediately by the change. We've got some schools that are looking more at the interims, and we're trying to look at that as what we could do to scale that in a little bit different way. Our assessment people are looking at that holistically about what we can do across the state, and certainly the Mercury schools will play a role in that. But schools will still be taking the state assessment. The emphasis, though, will be on some of the other areas we've talked about. But in almost every area, every school that we've gone to that's completely redesigned, academic scores have gone up. Yeah. I don't know if that was what they were attempting to do. In some cases, they were, because they were schools on improvement in other states. In other cases, they were high achieving school districts that wanted something else, like how to help their kids go more in a competency-based system. But I think almost in every case, if not every case, the average assessment scores have gone up. So what we're going to be trying to do is say, how do we organize school, this organization of school, differently to try to help more kids be successful than they are in the model today? That's really the challenge.
It is. And, all the research will support it, and we all know it. It's just hard to break old habits. But if you take care of kids' social emotional, you personalize it. And like Randy said, in every case we've been to in a redesign, guess what happens to academic performance? It goes up, because you're addressing, most kids that aren't successful academically, it's because of something else. It wasn't because they didn't have the capability to perform well academically, but it was other issues that through a redesign in a personalized environment, you were able to better address those, and then kids did. Is additional funding for subs included in Gemini? Nope. Mercury 7, Gemini 1s, they don't have any additional dollars. They don't have, this isn't through grants. What we're trying to do is say, how can we take a regular public education school with existing current resources and redesign? Because if it requires more money, selecting staff, selecting kids, that's what
building a new building.
That's what charter schools are. And we're saying we can do this in regular public schools.
And by the way, I want to say this, there are a lot of people that say we can't do it, and we think we can. So there's not additional funding for this. Now, I will say this, we have committed a lot of money and time to what we just, I think, an outstanding coaching model and outstanding staff development. And we're committed to that. But we want to make sure that anyone can do this with a lot of hard work and a decent coaching professional development model.
I will also add to that, don't want to mention any names, Jill, but that every place we've gone have figured out that they started allocating their resources locally a lot different.
I know that I was talking to some people, and I know one of the elementaries in McPherson, that's a Mercury school, decided to just do what Brad said. They're going to have some, I don't know what they're going to, I can't remember what they're calling them, innovation coaches or people that work with on the projects and how to handle all the personalization and scheduling. They're doing that in lieu of some other people that they had that were specialists in helping I think they were reading specialists and some other things that they're going to do away with. Jay was telling us about a school district in Utah that uses special ed staff entirely different because every kid was on a personalized journey, so you didn't need to differentiate like you think about special ed now. It is because every kid gets that attention, and so it was a little bit different. So these are great questions, and I know they're great concerns for everyone. And we appreciate them because we want you to have as much input and as much information as you can going forward. And we don't want there to be surprises. But I was in Lawrence on Friday talking to their secondary staff, and I asked their teachers, this is 4 middle schools and 2 high schools in Lawrence, what's your average caseload? 160 to 180 kids a day. Wow. When we think about that, we think about kids that need our support and need our help. That's impossible for a teacher. So that's a design structure.
Yeah. And I will, a couple things until other questions come up. I was with a group of curriculum directors last week, and they were asking questions. Oh, Sheila smiled. They were asking questions. What is the role of the curriculum director in a redesign? That's a great question. And I asked him, I said, well, just take the name of curriculum director. What do they direct? And Kansans told us 80% of what a successful young adult needs is those interpersonal, intrapersonal skills. We're the first state in the nation to adopt social-emotional character development standards. Most people think curriculum, math, English language arts, science. Well, what about SECD? And how do you,
or PE or music or tech ed
and how with all the open ed resources? Very unlikely you'll probably go through a 7-year textbook adoption cycle where you order big old thick. It changes the role of the librarian. Library media, what can they do around the use of technology as a tool to personalize and what resources and supports and building strong relationships with parents and community. Everybody's role leans into it a little differently because it's personalized to the child, not to the classroom. So
I think, we're going to see some interesting things after having spent a large portion of my career dealing with curriculum, assessment. I think we're on the early stages of that changing dramatically from the 7-year cycles we think of today to the flow of curriculum, to the funding, to the amount of money that's shelled out in those areas will be directed, I think, to other things. So we're just on the very early stages of that, but there's some interesting ways that money's being reallocated across the United States in different areas.
And what we're looking for at this point is the willingness that your teachers, your administrators, and your community has a willingness to go forward with redesign. And then next year, we will help then coach you through the process of it. So all the questions that you may have, that's what you'll be answering next year and designing your own launch pad, designing, piloting in order to be able to launch what you want in August of 2019. But That's the work you will do next year, and we will help coach, provide the supports, the resources.
Well, you know, Brad and I, we generally don't have anything to do on a Monday afternoon, so we're more than happy to hang out here as long as you'd like, because we don't want this to be mysterious, but there are a lot of things that we're still designing as we go. And Gemini 2s, while we will learn some things, we've already learned some things from Mercury and Gemini 1, we will continue to learn things in the Gemini 2 process.
The question, who will facilitate the regional meetings? It will be some people locally at each regional service center, partnering with staff from KSDE. We have 30 to 35 staff members here. We'll be going through the same training on how to facilitate, how to coach. It will also include Jay and Tammy as their schedules, because they'll be also working with Mercury 7 during their launch, but they'll be plugged in. So it'll be a combination of service center staff, KSDE staff, as well as hopefully even some of the Mercury 7 and some Gemini 1 people there engaged and involved as well.
Thank you, Mr. Regier.
Looks like he woke up. I also want to, I don't know, I may be saying this too early, but next week, Monday and Tuesday, is the Kansans Can Symposium. Not sure when the deadline, registration deadline is. You might check into that, but we'll also have Mercury 7 districts there giving presentations. Randy and I, Jay and Tammy will all be there. The service centers are hosting it, putting it on. So if you're registered, if not, you want to try to get in on that, but we'd be able to answer some more of your questions at that time.
We'd be able to spend as much time as you want really over those 2 days. That symposium is set up to really let you see, let you hear from the people doing it, ask direct questions to teachers, administrators about the pluses and minuses. And then if you want sideline conversations with Jay and Tammy or Brad or myself, then we'll have time to do that. And it looks like we're still taking registrations from that. And you know, Andover, shoot, you know that if I can be a part of anything that's redesigned in Andover, I'd love to go back to some old stomping grounds there. So still lots of good friends I have in Andover. Well, we're going to sign off. This is recorded. We'll post it on our website along with the first one. Feel free to share that with your staff. Feel free to call us.
You know what timeline?
And looks like when we'll be available, maybe in the next couple of days, Nick? Tomorrow. Nick says tomorrow. So we'll have both the first one, and which has the PowerPoint, and the second one. But if you have questions, just shoot us an email, schedule a time to call. We'd be happy, you know, if you want us to talk to your staff, we could Zoom in or maybe even come down if we can work that out. But we'd love to have you be a part of Gemini 2. I can't tell you the excitement we have in Mercury, and we look forward to that in Gemini 2. It is a lot of hard work, but I think most of the people that are involved right now say it's some of the most fun, exhilarating work they've ever done because they're really changing their school. And I can't tell you how many veteran, like 30-year teachers have come up to me with tears in their eyes of saying, finally, I get the opportunity to do what I think we should have done in school the entire time. Maybe we've lost focus. So whatever we can do to serve you and help you, we're at your service. And I hope to see some of you next week at the symposium, or give us a call. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.